Jamie, excited to be here today with you talking about the two financial jurisdictions that we work within, or our custodian banks are in. That's Liechtenstein, the tiny country that's 8 times smaller in landmass than the city of LA, and Switzerland, where we are sitting today. I think we can just really kind of dive off. Maybe you can give some background. I mean, you wrote a book, Swiss Money Secrets. Maybe you can kind of dive off with some interesting facts for Americans looking at, offshore banking, international diversification, and foreign investment, about some interesting facts that might not be lesser known about the two jurisdictions.
Sure. You put me on the spot here because I haven't prepared any fun facts, but I speak about Switzerland quite a bit, and I want to talk about Liechtenstein too today, because when I talk to people who are interested in our services, a lot of them have heard of Switzerland in the news, in a James Bond movie, wherever, but a lot of them have never heard of Liechtenstein. So maybe we can start off with Switzerland, where we're currently at, where WHVP is headquartered. We are a fairly small country, we have about 9 million people living here, but we are huge when it comes to cross-border wealth management. So we are currently still the leading financial hub when it comes to cross-border wealth management. So cross-border just means that the wealth is managed in another jurisdiction than where the client lives in. And we manage about 25% of that wealth in Switzerland, which is crazy considering that you can drive through Switzerland in like 4 hours. What attracts people to Switzerland as a financial hub? There's a variety of things. So one big topic that becomes more relevant now again, unfortunately, is our neutrality. We have a concept of armed neutrality. We have not been involved in an armed conflict in over 200 years. We were able to avoid both world wars despite them happening all around us. We have very strong privacy protection laws. We still have the Swiss Bank Secrecy Act of 1934 that still applies today. It doesn't give you any privacy towards the IRS, but no noisy family member or information broker will be able to pry any information out of your account. And then we also have a very stable democratic system. We don't have one president. We have a federal council of 7 people. We also have a variety of parties that are involved in our government, and we have this concept of a direct democracy where we can actually vote on specific issues, so not just elect politicians. All of those reasons have made Switzerland a leading hub and have also led to the fact that we have the longest track record in private wealth management compared to any other place in the world. Should I continue talking about Liechtenstein, or do you want to chip in
I was going to
share your experience on Switzerland?
Yeah, I was going to say, just from that was a great example of the history and kind of the reasons of, I would say the umbrella reasons of why Switzerland is such an attractive place, whether it's to live or for that cross-border wealth, for the finances to live, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I think it goes even further than that. In terms of the environment that has grown up within Switzerland there. I mean, Switzerland has more banks per capita, so per person, than the U.S. has. And the U.S. is I would argue you have Switzerland and the U.S., 2 different animals. You can't truly compare them one for one. But when you talk about, safe havens to a certain extent, I mean, it's Switzerland. And there's a reason for that even as a small country, I mean, you can get into even more umbrella facts that you have Switzerland, which is mostly a country in the mountains. So it makes it a very unattractive thing to try to deal with in a military conflict. I mean, there's so many reasons that you can get into, but it also, I think, boils down even further into what has cultivated that desire to hold assets in Switzerland is the culture, the education system, the values. I mean, this value of privacy that you brought up and banking secrecy, that's the privacy, the right to privacy is in the Swiss Constitution.
Yeah.
For an American, that was unbelievable. When I learned that about the Swiss Constitution, I thought, man, how did we forget that one in the U.S.? Like, it's so fascinating. And that's where the banking secrecy law came in, was like, hey, we need to protect the privacy of people. Privacy is a valuable thing. And that created a culture of, one, integrity, client-focused services, and an education system that builds professionals to serve clients, not just in Switzerland, which is a very wealthy nation. If we get into the government and how they don't have high taxes, they have low debt to GDP because of the people of Switzerland who voted for the debt break 22 years ago. And just how that's cultivated over, 500 years, this environment that people seek to be a part of.
And we also have a very strong currency with the Swiss franc.
Correct.
Right? So Switzerland is a safe haven country, but we also have this safe haven currency that, especially when you compare it to a country like the US dollar that fights with inflation, that has been devalued for a long time, that's most likely going to be devalued in the future as well, the Swiss franc is really a tool to keep your purchasing power when you think about international diversification. Now, when we look at Liechtenstein, a lot of the things that we mentioned now for Switzerland, they also apply to Liechtenstein. I said that Switzerland is a small country. Liechtenstein is the country that makes us feel big because their whole population is like 40,000 people.
Yeah.
So whereas you can drive through Switzerland in 4 hours, you can probably walk through Liechtenstein in like half an hour. It's a beautiful place. If you ever come to Zurich, visit us, and we are happy to take you there. It's about a 75-hour drive away from our office.
Minute, not hour.
75 minutes. 75 minutes. You probably wouldn't want to spend 75 hours in a car with me. 75 minutes. And it's also beautiful. It has a very nice little town. It has a nice forest and hills. It has a very beautiful castle because it is a constitutional monarchy. So I am not an expert on the royals of any country, but my understanding is that the prince can veto the government and the people can veto the prince. Mm-hmm. So they do have democracy, they do have a parliament, but the prince also is involved in the business of running the country. And this also makes it a very stable country. Switzerland has a low debt to GDP level of about 40%. In comparison, the US has about 140%. And Liechtenstein has 0.5% debt to their GDP. So they are a crazy rich country. I think they're the second richest country in Europe. They have a GDP per capita of about 187,000 US dollars, which is very high. And they also use the Swiss franc. They also use our postal service and our army, which are interesting facts. But that they use the Swiss franc as well also makes them very attractive as a financial hub. They have really made a name for themselves with their financial services industry, and they're all very strong in private banking as well. Also because they have a very wealthy royal family there, that they have their own bank too. My understanding, or to my knowledge, only one bank works with US clients in Liechtenstein, but they are a very solid option. And for me, it's always important the client has the choice of which bank they want to work together with. That can be a bank in Switzerland, that can be a bank in Liechtenstein, but it's always important to me that they understand the countries, the differences, the nuances, and also the similarities. Again, there's probably more similarities than differences, but one of the differences between Liechtenstein and Switzerland is that Liechtenstein is part of the EEA, the European Economic Area. So both countries are neutral. Both countries are not part of the European Union. But again, Liechtenstein is part of the European Economic Area. So that makes Liechtenstein a little bit closer to the EU, and it also means that Liechtenstein is regulated based on the European Union's regulatory framework. It is very similar to the Swiss framework. It's not exactly the same. For the relevancy of the client is mostly what's the equivalent of the FDIC, so what happens to my money if a bank goes under, either in Switzerland or Liechtenstein. And there it's always very important to me to say that we are extremely prudent in the banks that we work together with in either jurisdiction. We have extremely high standards when it comes to the banks that we choose to work together with. And in the almost 35 years of our company being in existence, none of the banks we have ever worked together with have come even close to financial trouble. Nevertheless, it's important to talk about worst case scenarios, even though they're unlikely. And the case for both countries is if the bank goes under, 100,000 Swiss francs of cash are insured. So you get that back, no questions asked, immediately. And then all the investments into stocks, bonds, and physical precious metals, they are held in your own name off the balance sheet of the bank. So if the bank were to go under, all those investments, they are yours, plus the 100,000 cash that are insured. And then all the cash that exceeds those 100,000 Swiss francs, that will go into bankruptcy proceedings. Doesn't mean that the money's gone entirely. It just means there will be a few years until you get it back, and you might not get, or you're most likely not getting the full amount back. But if you are fully invested or almost fully invested, your entire portfolio is going to be insured in both jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important piece to kind of bring up. And a little caveat I'd say that we talk about is when Americans think of bank accounts, mostly they think of retail, checking, savings. The banks that Americans can access in Liechtenstein and Switzerland are not retail banks. They're not offering retail bank services to American clients. They're offering investment services to clients. And I think the importance there is that, you know, these are nest egg investment accounts to make sure that you have that diversification in one of these jurisdictions that offer a lot of safety, a lot of privacy, a lot of data protection, and a high level of client care and services. I think the other side is, you know, to talk about to the private banking aspect of the fundamental different business model that these private banks have versus your standard kind of U.S. commercial investment bank / broker, is, you know, these banks are looking to be sustainable. Almost all the family banks we work with are family owned. So they think, okay, how do I sustain this bank and what we've done as this business that I can pass it to the next generation? So they're thinking generational as opposed to I need to push the quarter numbers quarter to quarter, which can lead to conflict of interest for investment managers of that work for those banks, because they'll have managers, you know, pushing for the company's bank where they make their money. They can offer a very cheap custodian fee in the US because they have funds that they can put into your portfolio that will generate them some revenue. And in Switzerland, in this kind of a setup, working with an independent asset manager and a private bank, you're going to get actual, I would say, free from conflict of interest investing done on your behalf, because there are no kickbacks to us. There are no kickbacks to the bank. You know, the portfolio built, you're going to pay a higher custodian fee and higher maybe management fees that look at it. But at the end, you know exactly who you're paying and what you're paying. There's no under the table with this institution to there. And I think that offers a really interesting environment in the business model of the kind of bank that you work with, that you're going to get in Liechtenstein or Switzerland.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Jamie. Look forward to the next video.
Me too.